Hello, everyone. Hi, Graham.
Hi there.
You're here early. I'm going to be doing a lot of things before I introduce you, so stick around and stand by. Um, it's fine to hang out. That fabulous tune is Mount Hills, and it's by the band Alchemy, and the musicians are Rachel Bell, Karen Axelrod, and Eric Martin. The album is Turning of the Hour, and you can get that at Rachel Bell Music. If you don't have it, you definitely should. I am Darlene Hamilton, and we are the Historical Tea and Dance Society. Welcome, everyone, to our anniversary show and our first guest who's with us, as you can see. But first, I want to introduce my team. I introduce them every week, and let me tell you, I really would not want to do this show without this fabulous team of professionals. Lindsay Verbal, who assists with the program in tech rehearsals and handling media during our show and our attendee questions in the after talk. Reed Wilson monitoring Zoom for those questions and postings. Larry Hansen, who monitors Facebook live chat for questions and postings. Yeah. And I've mentioned questions a lot. Make sure you put them in those chat boxes. I think you all know where they are by now, but Lindsay will do some pointing and some of the others will. We probably won't have time for them in tonight's web chat, but we will get to everyone in the after talk. So make sure you check out where that chat box is, because that is where you're going to find the link to the after talk if you don't already have it. You did get it if you registered for this Zoom meeting. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you're going to have to pull it out of the chat. Thank you to Karen Axelrod and friends, the concert that she puts on every Tuesday live on Facebook in the moment. We just can't say enough about it. Thank you. We love you all. We love our musicians. Tonight, before we get to our guest, I'd like to introduce some of the other folks who have been mostly behind the scenes you don't always get to meet. Dan Vilter, who is our understudy for both Lindsay and I, if ever one of us can't make it. He's there. He's a sound tech guru as well, and all sorts of other wonderful things. So glad you're here. Kara King, who writes all our bios and our blurbs every week. Yeah, Kara. Oh, my team. And back to say hello, one of our founding team members, Renee Turner. She's been having trouble with the internet. I'm not sure if she's still in. There she is. She just wanted a dramatic entrance. Thank you for coming in and saying hi. And we also want to give a shout out to other helpers a lot that we've had along the way or that are still working behind the scenes. Linda Nelson, Laura Bartok, Elvira Klein, who posts our show to YouTube every week. And of course, Colin Hume, who so faithfully gets our videos indexed for easy access to all on that link that is now on our website. So you go to the website to get the past chats, including our original show. And thank you to all of you, because you tune in every week, and we're so happy to have you join in with your comments and interactions, your banter and puns. You make it so much fun, and we love you all. We really do. We love our community. And to our 5 Things guests, past, future, and present, we have so much gratitude for the labor of love every one of you have given to our community. And I don't mean just this show, but the years of service and all the work you put in. Each week, it is always a thrill and an honor to get to know you and work with you and to listen to your stories. It's been great. We have been blessed with music, laughter, life-changing stories, and friendships, old and new. What a year. What a year. We have certainly made lemonade out of lemons. And on our anniversary, I'm so happy to have returning to our show, our first guest, our friend Graham Christian. And first, let me give you a brief bio, and he's going to have to sit by and listen to us sing his praises. Graham Christian calls English country dances. He researches their history, teaches and writes about them to spread his knowledge throughout the dance community. He's been teaching and calling English country dance throughout the United States and Europe for decades. I'm not exactly sure how long decades is, but I know it's been a while, so thank you. Like many avid country dancers, he attended Swarthmore College for his undergraduate work. What is it about that place? He then went on to earn 3 advanced degrees, a master's in theology, a master's in library science, and a PhD in 17th century English literature. Wow. Drawing on the expertise he gained in those pursuits, he turned his scholarly mind to the history of English country dance, and in 2015 produced the Playford Assembly for Country Dance and Song Society. Graham continues adding to our knowledge of country dance history through his CDSS news column, Tell Me More. It's very intriguing. You want to read it. He's a choreographer as well, and he has created dances such as the lovely Angels Unawares. Beautiful dance. Please welcome Graham Christian, our first guest back for our first anniversary. We're so happy you're with us.
Well, Darlene, thank you. And so I'm going to change my view here so I can sort of see myself as well as other things. I think we're ready for thing 1. Is that fair?
Yes.
Thing 1. The Merry Conceit, Dancing All Around My Life. So the title is
wait.
Yes.
Are we going to play that music?
So the Merry Conceit, which is a Kynaston dance, and I chose that as thing 1 because I have a conceit for the structure of my anniversary 5 things, and the conceit is to use the name, the title of a tune of an English country dance for each of the 5 things. So that's what that is. So that's the Merry Conceit. And the first one is I've called Dancing All Around My Life. And anybody who has any impression that I'm motivated by an egotistical interest in my own life would be mistaken. And I find it completely appalling to talk about my life and my past and my history. But I've had requests and I decided to accede to them. Those of you who know about certain comic turns will understand what I'm saying when I say I've had many requests, but I'm going to talk about myself anyway. All right, so the Merry Conceit, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the presence that social dance, English country dance, has had in my life, which has been remarkably large. I really started out as a musician, as a kind of an English literature nerd. I turned up at Swarthmore College, and I was doing those things, and I got pulled into English country dance and Scottish country dance because some friends of mine said, "Oh, you're going to like this." And my impression is that my recollection is that I was like most boys, I was kind of terrible, that I was not really a wonderful dancer by instinct. But I did it. And the thing that I really enjoyed was, or sort of fell in love with, was actually Rapper Sword. Let me see if I can accurately cue here. So I think we have a first photo, don't we? All right, so there he is. It's a few years ago, but I look more or less the same. All right, so that's fair enough as a starter. So I kind of fell in love with Rapper Sword dance. Let's take a look at the second image. Yes, so that's Robin Hayden with me. This is a a dance event much later in my dance career, but Robin was one of my early dance buddies. And I'm if I have time, or maybe in the after talk, I can talk a little bit about my reunion with her through the medium of English country dance. So music was really first, and then I found rapper. Let's take a little bit of a look at I have a small clip. This again is a little bit after my college career, but I can give you a little bit of context of that after we see a little bit of it. Yeah, guess who's the Wicked Witch of Oz there? Great. All right. So I'm going to roll forward a little bit. So it'll be a little bit of out of sequence temporally. But so several years after I had left college, Rapper Sword, which was my great love, and I had refound social dance through Contra, and then eventually into English, which I'll come back to in a little bit. And I was dancing with a good friend in the sort of gender role neutral Contra and English circles, and we discovered inadvertently that each of us had known and fallen in love with rapper sword dance. And so Dean Alamang, who's responsible for furnishing me with that little bit of a video clip, and I founded and ran the Gay Blades rapper sword team, which to our knowledge was the first explicitly gay, bi, lesbian rapper sword team in the world. And so we ran that for about 10 years. And one of our specialties was thematic and novelty choreographies. And what you can see there is maybe our most celebrated dance routine, which is about 6 minutes long, not 60, 6 minutes long. And it was a retelling of the story of the Wizard of Oz in rapper sword dance. So you were seeing a little fragment of that. We just wanted to find one excerpt that would feature me prominently. And I'll leave it to you why I was selected as the Wicked Witch of the West. I'll just leave that to you, and we'll leave it there. But that was one of the great pleasures of my life. So I went on to Boston, but I retained a strong interest in dance, and I intermittently experimented with several different dance forms, including Baroque dance, and I got very interested in that at a couple of different instances of the Amherst Early Music Festival, which has moved around from place to place. Usually not actually in Amherst, Massachusetts. But let's bring up, I think it's photo 1-4. And this is probably 15 or 20 years ago now, which is a little shocking. So there I am as the god Bacchus in the Amherst Early Music Festival. Features, among other things, the performance of a slightly abbreviated version of a Baroque opera. And so here I am with my nymphs, and we had a spectacular dance routine. And my dear friend Ronnie Snader was and is the costumer for the Amherst Early Music Festival, and she supplied me with that little bit of gossamer that I was wearing. And that's good for that. I think that'll be fine. So after a number of years, I decided that it was time for me to do what everyone had been telling me I really ought to be doing for many years, which is to go ahead and get a PhD in English literature. So I thought that I should move out to Amherst in Massachusetts to do the work. And I'm happy to report that my English country dance friends, because I had started calling earnestly then, and I'll talk a little bit more about my calling work a little later in the hour, before I arrived, had already said, we have to set up a dance series with you. So I had already started calling a monthly advanced dance series on the first Saturday of every month, which we called then the Amherst Assembly. And I started calling that months before I actually moved here. And then I moved here, and we kept that series going for about 7 years, and it was a wonderful experience. So let's take a look at the photo 1-5. So there it is, my sort of cheesy printed version of my doctoral dissertation, which I completed in 2012, which was a scholarly transcription and annotation of the poems of Lady Hester Poulter, who was a gentlewoman of the 17th century, who wrote poetry essentially in her spare time. And I'm sorry to tell you that she does not explicitly reference dance, but a couple of her daughters were musicians, and it was a wonderful experience. And we can talk more about who she was and what she was like in the after talk if anybody's curious. Very shortly after I moved here, Robin Hayden, who was the woman who was beside me at that Playford Ball photo earlier on, she got a telephone call from the local light opera company asking if she might like to create a little choreography for their next production. And she said, "Oh, that's not me. That's not my thing at all. I don't know anything about choreographing for the stage. But why don't you give Graham a call?" And I got a telephone call from them, and I said, "Okay," not knowing any better. And so I started by choreographing the Gilbert and Sullivan light opera Ruddigore for them. And that was the beginning of a continuing and a very happy relationship with that light opera company. And I've choreographed 8 or 9 different productions with them. And I've also taken lead roles with them. And here I am as the Duke of Plaza Toro in The Gondoliers, which was among the most enjoyable things I've ever done on the stage. And that was a wonderful joy. And that was back in 2006. And I've also directed for them, which has been wonderful. And I've directed several different productions. In the meantime, or sort of in the background, as it were, I've retained my interest in dance, especially historical dance outside English country dance. So I've continued to do a little bit of teaching and execution of Renaissance and Baroque dance. And my dear friend Nona Monaghan has more than once honored me by asking me to dance with her and some of her other dancers in these settings. So here's a fabulous event that we did at a Polish American society not far from here. This was 3 years ago, and we did a whole sequence of dances circa 1600 there, and that's us photographed. So my involvement with the light opera company as a choreographer and a director and manager of the or president of the board and other roles that I've taken with them has led me into I hesitate to use the word, but I'll just use it, straight theater as well. So non-musical theater as well. So I've had a couple of directing projects out here, also directing operas, but directing straight plays as well. And my recent involvement with that was The Lion in Winter, in which I was both King Henry and I was the director. And that was one of the proudest moments of my life, I have to say. So there I am with my wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine. There I am as Henry II of England and France. And there I am with my mistress, my 30 years younger mistress, but there it is. And that was a year before quarantine, and in effect our lives changed. So I think my point, and I do have one, is that it's fascinating to me to see the ways in which my involvement with social dance has drawn me sometimes in unexpected and indirect ways into one project after another, so that I've been drawn gradually back into theatrical life. You know, I've been drawn into rapper sword life. So I've been pulled in these wonderful and fascinating directions. So I think that's thing one.
Wow. Love those photos. All right. Thing number two. We're doing it a little different tonight.
So I started uh, teaching English country dance in 1998, and you'll see the evidence in, I think, thing four. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my gratitude to the wonderful teachers that I've had, and I regret that I don't have photographs of the first two people that I will mention, but I was having difficulty locating photographs for which I could get clear provenance, and I really wanted to be respectful to them. So I started calling English country dance as an outgrowth of having suddenly sort of rediscovered contra dance and then English country dance in a specifically gay, bi, lesbian, and friends context. So I had started in college where that wasn't a question, and then I got drawn back in several years later in that specific context. And there was a gang of 20 or 25 gay, bi, lesbian, and allies contra dancers who decided that it would be good to found an English country dance that would be called without reference to gender in Boston. So I danced with them for a little bit, having been a founder member. And then there came a moment where they needed me as a caller, and I started calling. And this is a very common story. Often when you start to call, the bug gets its fangs into you, and you simply can't let go. And I couldn't let go. And I give due credit to Michael Ciccone and Rob Dobson, who were the senior leaders of that dance. And when I made myself an apprentice, they were my teachers. And they taught me crucial things about programming, about the shape of an evening, about variation of key and meter and mood and format, about reading a crowd, about when to cut your losses, about how to manage recordings, about how to manage live musicians, about the pace of calling, about when to pitch your calls, your prompts in a measure. And it was a wonderful apprenticeship, and I learned immensely from them. And after a few years with them, to my surprise, I was catapulted into calling at the Boston Center, a very, within our tiny little world, a very prestigious event. And I was suddenly in the rotation for the Boston Center. And that gave me an opportunity to watch and observe what Helena did. And let's take a look at our Nikki Herbst's photograph of Helena. There she is. And I still miss her. I still miss her immensely, immensely. And I would not say, there was no sense in which I was formally her student, because when I met her, I was a member of her staff. So in effect, although I never thought that at that point that I was a fully grown caller, I was trying to behave as though I were a fully grown caller. But I watched and listened and studied everything she did, the way that she programmed, her demeanor, her calm, her sense of programming, when to start, when to stop, when to vary the mood, when to be a little severe and when to be comical. And she was, in every sense, a class act. And she knew the dances. She knew them in her bones. And she had been calling long enough, but she had also internalized the great dances so much that, with few exceptions, she could call without reference to a card, without a reference to a document. And in the past couple of years, the same thing has happened to me, where I many dances now I can call without reference to a card. I know them. I really know them in my bones. And I said, oh my God, it's the Helena effect. And that really delights me. And so I learned immensely from her. And I'm more grateful to her than, of course, I ever had an opportunity to express to her. So there's another great teacher I want to mention, and she's a little bit of a surprise, maybe for those of you who knew her and knew me in context. But let's bring up a photograph of Fried. So this is Fried at a potter's porch in 2005. This is Paul Ross's photograph, and I thank Paul for that. And Fried, what a pistol she was. What a pistol. And I had the great pleasure of dancing to her calling many times, at home in Westchester, where I called to her at Nomad, I called to her at other festivals and weekends, and of course at the Fried for All a number of times. And Fried and I would occasionally lock horns, and we did not always agree. And I remember having a quasi argument with her early in my career as a caller, when I was calling exclusively without reference to gender, and she was a little dubious about that. But Brad Foster has talked about this too. In some ways, there was nothing Fried liked better than having a little argy-bargy with someone who cared about English country dance as much as she did, and had as much to bring to the table in terms of grit and intelligence as she did. And her principles, and you can find those in the introductions to her big dance collections. Her principles, her ideals for what an English country dance caller should know and should bring to the dancers are impeccable, and are models for all of us. And I reread them every several months to remind myself what we should want. And that's magical. And that's not even touching the repertoire of fantastic dances that she left to us. And so, as much as she was a piece of work, I loved her and I miss her. So she was another wonderful teacher and somebody that I remember. So there's another teacher I want to remember who wasn't really, she wouldn't have described herself really as a caller, but so let's bring up a picture of Kitty Keller. So there's Kitty. And so Kitty was a dance scholar. And most of you who are tuned into this program will know, of course, that she was a co-author of the Playford Ball. Now, She also wrote a number of other works, and she was a musicologist first and foremost. And she, in collaboration with her husband, Bob Keller, who died quite recently, to my sorrow and everyone's sorrow, they also created, well, the first they created important indices of dances and secular musical tunes that were used for dances in the United States and in Europe. So that they have this important role as collators and indexers. But I guess I'll address in primarily her work with the Playford Ball. And she co-created that with Genevieve Ginny Scheimer. And the Playford Ball, as some of you may know, as Katie said, the Playford Ball was basically Ginny's dance cards. But in other words, the dances that Ginny thought were the dances became the Playford Ball. So the dance instructions in the Playford Ball were Ginny's, with a little editing and correction from Kitty, because Ginny was nearing the end of her life. Everything else was Kitty. So the introduction, the heading, the musical notation, the annotations, the index, the glossary, everything else was Kitty. And that's an extraordinary achievement. And my work in the Playford Assembly was only, in effect, supplementing and following up on everything that she did. And in addition to that, Kitty was unfailingly generous as a scholar. I mean, not only to me, but to everyone who came to her and said, "What do you know about?" or "Do you have a copy of?" And she would say, "I think it's downstairs on microfilm. Give me a few minutes." And there it would be. And she would present it to you. And so the fruits of her work were immense. And, you know, if I have only followed in her footsteps, I've done a huge thing. And one of the things that she, in effect, created for us as an impression was that the context of the dances that we dance as modern dances in their own time has meaning for us now. And that's why she said, here's where the tune came from. Here's what the title of the dance might suggest. And I have enlarged upon that, but I owe it all to her. Okay, thing 3. I could see Darlene with her card. Great. All right, there's thing 3. So I've entitled this "The Lover's Luck," which is the title of a fantastic, absolutely distinctive dance by Thomas Bray, published in 1699. Okay, this is a big topic, and I won't even pretend that I will touch on every aspect of it in this talk, and I hope that we will touch on it in the after talk if people are interested. So I was trained up, in fact, in the gender role neutral calling tradition. In other words, I started to dance without any reference to that. But when I started to dance with a little more focus, and absolutely when I started to call, the tradition that I was trained in was the tradition that was devised by a fellow named Carl Whitman. And he was a fascinating figure. And Again, we can talk about more about that in the after talk, but he was a real, a genuine revolutionary, that he was a political revolutionary, and that he was a revolutionary in sexual politics. So, and he wrote something that was called the Gay Manifesto, and but he was a real, as we would say now, a genuine leftist. But one of the things that he realized was that English country dance, and for him also Scottish, because he also did Scottish and reconstructed some of those as well, that those dance forms were available to people who were not heteronormative as ways of expression of friendship and community, and also possibly of all the varieties of the nuances of sexuality and sexual flirtation, and on back to friendship and back and forth. So he understood all of that, and when I started to call without reference to gender, that is where I began. And over the years, for pragmatic reasons, I call with reference to gender at least as often as without reference to gender. But one of the things that I wanted to draw attention to was that, let me step back and place a little bit more historical context around this, which is that I say, many callers with an interest in history will say, well, this is about courtship. Like in the 18th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, this was about courtship and flirtation, and young people would do this in order to evaluate each other in a safe way about whether this would be a suitable marital partner. And that's true, although my researchers have also shown me that this form of dance was also social. So it would happen in court contexts, or village contexts, or other contexts where it was social and friendly as much as it was a marriage market. And so one of the things that is wonderful about our form of dance is that it allows dancers to be fully embodied, but also to lift themselves out of routines around standard courtship and flirtation. Many years ago on the English country dance discussion list, I said something like, I'm going to paraphrase myself now, as though I were worth quoting, that when I am really dancing, I am beyond gender or sexuality, that I'm fully embodied, but I'm dancing, and I have a complete, full, rich relationship with my partner, whatever the gender, sex, sexuality, assignment, self-definition of that partner is, that I can have as full a relationship on the dance floor as a human being with our clothes on as I could possibly desire. And that is that's a remarkable thing, and something that I think that we should really treasure. So a little to move into the pragmatics a little bit more. So the world has been changing a lot in the last 15, 20 years around how we feel about that. When I was first dancing, often in a dance space, I or my friends and I might be the first people to come into a dance context and not care really which side, which line we stood in. And 20 years ago, that was very hard on some dancers, very confusing for some dancers. That has changed quite a bit, quite a bit. I could name to you, but I won't, numerous dance communities in which I was probably the first person not to dance on my assigned side of the hall. And it was startling. And that now in those same spaces, it's irrelevant. Really nobody cares. That they understand that it doesn't matter at all. That our dance form is preserved, and that we can be ourselves, absolutely and totally ourselves, on any side. So that's magical, and that's a great thing. Um, so I wanted to mention also that the wonderful work that Brooke Friendly and Chris Sackett are doing out on the West Coast, and they are among the prime inheritors of the tradition of Carl Whitman, and they're doing wonderful work out there. And the tradition persists also out on the East Coast, back where I started to call at the dance in the Boston area in Jamaica Plain, and that still goes on. And we are also in a period of change and transition, because younger dancers are now increasingly asking us to think about not simply dance without reference to gender, but to figure out a way to acknowledge leading and following or non-binary experience in new ways. So that's going to be very interesting to think about. All right, I think I've moved through that. Thing 4, shall we talk about thing 4?
Absolutely.
All right, take a dance. The making of the Playford Assembly. God help us. All right, so I promised Darlene and everyone out in Pasadena that this was not going to be an advertisement for the book. It's not. I'm assuming that everyone in the audience who wants a copy has a copy. But I think that the reason I wanted to bring it up this evening was that to talk about a little bit about the generation of the volume, but also how it changed me, which was quite substantially. So this project was in fact sort of abortively started while when Helena was alive and Philippe was alive and Brad was still the executive and artistic director of the Country Dance and Song Society. And Philippe at a certain point turned to me and said, you know, there ought to be a second volume to the Playford Ball. You know, there ought to be more. And this you would like this. You would like this. You would enjoy doing this. And we talked about some dances that might be included. And I showed the list to Helena, and she had some comments. And we showed the list to Brad, and for a whole variety of reasons, the project stalled, and for a number of years. And then I moved out here. I did the dissertation that I've already told you about, and I finished it. And Pat McPherson, then at the Country Dance and Song Society, walked up to the stage of the Munson Library and said, "You finished your dissertation, and so now it's time for you to do a book for us. You know, that book that we've talked about." So that's how that got started. And the process was interesting, and I was particularly committed to both to making my own imprint as a caller, as a person of taste as an editor on the volume, but also in feeling moderately confident that I had consulted a wide range of opinions. So we had a consultative board, in effect, where that I showed a large range of dances to for their reactions. And I had a number of criteria for selecting the dances that we selected. But what I would like particularly to draw attention to this evening is the way that it changed me as a scholar, as a writer, as a caller. Before I really got to work on the Playford Assembly, I think that, like a lot of people, I thought I knew what was best by my own lights, and that it was easy for me to dismiss, particularly on grounds of historical accuracy, things that I didn't like, that I could throw away for historical reasons. But when I considered, and my case study for this is always the Irish lamentation. And the Irish lamentation in Tom Cook's interpretation was one of Helena Cornelius's favorites. Sometimes she would, if we had a little extra time on an evening in Boston, she would say, "Oh, let's do Irish Lamb." That's how much she loved it. She just called it Irish Lamb. And I was so dubious about it when she called it, because Tom Cook's version seems on the face of it not much like the original. But because it is beautiful as he reconstructed it, I included it in his version. And digging down into both its original form in the 18th century and his interpretation, looking at the one and the other, and the one and the other, and being constrained to explain, to describe his movements, his inversion as he had created it, I saw the kinship, the relationship between his choices and the original, and how he had worked as a choreographer, and the thought that he had given to it. And that lesson applied throughout the volume. In other words, I then could understand how these interpreters of historical dances had done their work, and why. Why do you make the choices that you make? Why do you, as Charles Bolton sometimes said, well, why do you involve the twos more, and how? How do you make that work? And that completely inverted, transformed my sense of what they had done. And it also absolutely reshaped my sense of how dances are described, and how they ought to be prompted. So there's a sense in which a dance figure must be fully described for the understanding of a choreographer, a dance scholar, a caller. And there's also a sense in which you have to give a working caller the material that caller needs to deliver the material, on a random weekday evening at a dance. So it changed me from someone who thought he knew everything to someone who understood what the priorities and what the gifts of those who would come before me were really like. So that was really extraordinary. All right, I think that's thing 4. I think that's pretty conclusive for thing 4.
Actually, we had a video we were going to show.
Oh, yes.
Let's do that. It's a wonderful video.
set. Circle right halfway.
Wolf pony.
One is cast down. Two hand turn halfway. Two is cast down. Turn halfway. Long back to back. Three changes, right to cartwheel, left to caper. Two hand turn halfway, face up. Two is cast once cross, keep it small. One is down to the next. Two's on the side.
So that's
Great.
that's Winter Dreams, which was sort of just before the curtain dropped. When I was last out in California, so that was a wonderful weekend, the Winter Dreams weekend, February of 2020.
It's always great dance. All right.
Think 5. All right, think 5, the hop ground. So the hop ground, of course, a wonderful dance, late 18th century, great tune, simple dance, but really, really satisfying. So the hop ground, and I won't. You could look at the paper assembly yourself about hops and hop picking and dancing at hop picking, which is quite a thing. But of course, even in the 18th century, 19th century, it was a pun because the illustration for the hop ground in the Playford Assembly is a hop merchant, but pretty clearly he's a dancing master. So hopping, get it? Yeah. Okay. It's all sinking in now. Hopping. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit now about this profession or quasi-profession that we have created over the last 100 years, but I want to draw attention particularly to the last 10 or so years of the profession of the dancing master. So in the 16th, 17th, 18th, even into the 19th century, there was, for the most part, I'm sure that there were exceptions and some notated exceptions, what we would call dancing masters were not callers in the modern sense. Their work was done before you arrived at a social dance event. So they had their academies and their lessons and their pupils and their resources and their books, but their work was done before people arrived at the assembly rooms. And the dances were called by the various, particularly ladies, particularly by the end of the 18th century. But what we have done in the last 100 years particularly is that we have fused the identity of the dancing teacher, the dancing master, with the caller. So one person might fulfill all of those functions, which is to say that one person would be a dance instructor, but also be a prompter. So all of those things together. So I have seen the quasi-profession of the caller in English country dance. This is to some extent true in contra dance too, but I'm less professed in that, so I won't speak to it really. I've seen it evolve and change quite a bit. When I was first watching callers like Helena early on in my career, there were relatively fewer of them than there are now. The field is, I wouldn't say it's overpopulated, but more callers have arisen over time. And the atmosphere and the expectation around the collar has shifted a bit. So, I watched this happen with some dismay, that the caller is more and more expected to deliver material at a great speed and to be in one way or another, whether it's by comedy or some other form, to be a form of entertainment as well as delivering material. And if you have the privilege of looking at video footage of someone like Helena or like Fried, that is not their expectation. The contract that a caller like Helena implicitly has entered into with her dancers is that they are all committed together to executing to the best of their ability this wonderful and important dance form. So that means that they're not, the grousing is going to be minimal. They're not going to interrupt her. They're not going to stamp their feet. And that they all understand something that is in danger of being lost, which is that for us to dance together, this kind of dance is important. It makes a difference. It makes us better. It connects us with each other. It connects us with the past and the future. So that's a little bit problematic. And it's, so this is now going to sound as though I'm uttering a series of complaints, but I'm not. This is a challenge to all of our interconnected communities. I think that too many communities around the country, probably around the world, insufficiently understand what English country dance callers, of course, contra and Scottish too, but I'll speak to English because that's what I know, that they insufficiently understand what we do, that English country dance callers commit to thousands of dollars of expenditure on their resources, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of labor, studying dances, learning dances, memorizing dances, creating programs, that they make an immense commitment for love. And that I think a lot of communities and events pit callers in competition against each other in a way that makes all of their effort feel even more difficult. And I think that that's very problematic. And that I think some communities, some events, don't give callers the love. I'll give an example of a very dear dance friend of mine went to a dance event, which by long tradition pays musicians and doesn't pay callers. And this dance friend remarked on this to one of the organizers and said, "Don't you think that's odd?" And the organizer said, referring to the musicians, "Well, they have a talent. And I can't convey anything more offensive to a caller than to suggest that the caller doesn't have a talent and hasn't worked and isn't exhibiting every effort possible. And not least because many, many, many callers are also musicians themselves. They understand what the musicians are doing. And the callers create a frame by programming intelligently. They create a frame that allows both musicians and dancers to blossom. In other words, especially in English country dance, where it's not, the musicians don't pick the tunes, the callers are selecting the tunes and they shape an entire evening. And I can tell you from thousands of hours of experience that I always think about my musicians, the musicians for a particular night, and to say, that's going to be a great tune for him. So I'm going to pitch that tune at a time when the dancers are going to enjoy it, when he's going to be at his best. He's going to go to town on that tune, and they're going to love it. And that's part of what we do. And I see that I've hit the magic hour. It's 10 o'clock in my time, 7 o'clock your time.
Well, you did, but I took a few extra minutes in the beginning. So we certainly want to show that one picture of that notebook. But
oh yeah,
if
sure.
there's anything else you want to say, please take a moment, because I did take a little bit of your time.
Sure. So this is this was my very first caller's notebook, and it's a little book. You can see it's the date in the upper left corner is 1998, which was the first time that I ever called, and it was the notebook in which I wrote down every program I called. I'm a little bit less faithful now, but I still have a notebook of the same kind, and I'll show it to you. So here's my current notebook. And here's another book that you'll see a lot of callers of something of this kind, which is my gig notebook. And this is now a big binder that I carry around to gigs that has indispensable dances that are outside the Playford Ball and the Playford Assembly that I call and that I need, and extra copies for musicians and all those other good things. So I think that'll do.
Ah, that was great. And we have a lot of things to talk about in the after talk, that is for sure. Graham, we're not going to let you go without asking you, what's your favorite dance?
So when I was here a year ago, and I said to Darlene earlier in the week, I hope that we don't do a second anniversary of these, because I hope we'll all be dancing together. But I said in the first talk that my favorite dance was Mount Hills, and choreographically, I will abide by that. But there are a couple of other dances that I absolutely love to do as a dancer, and one of them is Leather Lake House in Freed Herman's interpretation. There's nothing more enjoyable than that.
That's a great dance and a great piece of music. Well, thank you, Graham, so much for coming back to talk to us, because we really didn't know what we were doing on that first show, and now we really feel like we have your 5 things. So thank you. And looking forward to talking more in the after talk.
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to my team, Lindsay Verbal in the background, Reed Wilson on Zoom, Larry Hansen on Facebook, along with helpers Kara King and Dan Vilter, as you met earlier in the show. You can watch our past 5 Things web chats, and you can find that link now on our website. Again, shout out, thank you to you-know-who that we've been doing since March 2020 on the Historical Tea and Dance Society website. Check out the list, because a lot of you have requested people and we've already had them on. Hey, how about that? We don't publicize the after talks, but they are available if you write to us and request them. So they are available if you can't make it or sometime. So yeah, just so you know that. Big thank you to people who have sent in donations to our group. It's really appreciated. You have helped cover our operating expenses. We really appreciate that. And of course, we have our little thing that we love so much. Lots of fun. It's our pin. It's a fundraiser, and you will get one if you follow the directions in the chat box. You too can have one. Make sure to send your mailing address, or Reed will not be happy. He'll put them to work. The link is posting in the after talk. The link is posting for the after talk in the chat box right now. And a reminder that we do save the chats in our Dropbox folder. The link for that is going to post also. But if you can only grab one thing out of that chat box, you want the after talk link. Coming up next week, Audrey Knuth. Yay! We're really happy to have Audrey with us, and we're going to post a blurb about her. And I'm sure you all know her by now if you've been doing anything online. And this Saturday, we have another workshop. We have a workshop with Dave Weisler. It's the magic of dance tunes. We really loved him on 5 Things, and he came and talked to us about dance tunes the second time he was back, and now we're doing a workshop. So the link is in the chat for that. It's also on our Facebook page and on our website. You can find the information there. Join us for tea time on Thursdays, 5 p.m. Pacific. We love having people stop in, even if you're only here for 5 minutes just to say hi. It's great fun. You can sign up for our mailing list. For donations, support the work Graham is doing by donating directly to him. Graham's a caller, a historian. He's doing a lot of things for us all. And he asks us to remember to support our local callers and musicians. We really need everybody there. We're getting close. We know we're getting close. So we need everybody doing okay in there when we come back. Before we play our exit music, spontaneously, I'm going to say before we play our exit music, you all should listen to Karen Axelrod's In the Moment today, because our Lindsay debuted on the show. She played one of my favorite tunes. So make sure you check it. It's about halfway through. You're going to want to hear it. And I wanted to say, as I said in the beginning, we have been blessed with music and laughter and life-changing stories and friendships, old and new. What a year. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week because we're still here. Our exit music is Graham's favorite dance, Leather Lake House. We'll see you in 2 minutes.